Yeah, no, that's all good, valuable information. And you obviously learned a lot while you were there, especially the politics of DC, right?
I'm waiting for you to do a program someday on surviving the White House because I have a lot of lessons. I'm not sure if that's as cool as what you talk about, but I certainly can impart some key lessons.
I bet. I bet. I know. I can hear it in your voice. All right. So now let's get into some fun stuff. So, being a career spy and having done what you've done for as long as you've done it, lessons learned that apply to the average person, right? So, you know, we call it tradecraft. For those of you listening, tradecraft really is just a discreet way of getting business done. There's a lot of schools out there and training that both Chris and I have had, and there's a lot of cool stuff you see in Hollywood that exploits some of that. But if I were to, if I was walking down the street and I thought I had a stalker, Chris, what would you advise? Some cool tricks or tips that you think that might help to determine whether or not I've got a stalker or not?
So I guess I would run a improvised surveillance detection route, which I've been trained to do. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not talking about looking into windows and stopping and tying my shoe. I'm talking about maybe going into what we would call, an intrusion point, into a store. If the individual who's on the street follows me into a store that has multiple exits and entrances, like in a mall, if I
Mm-hmm.
could do that in an improvised way, and that individual follows me into that location and exits with me at one of those many exits, then that's more than a coincidence. And maybe I'm going to do something again to just determine that I am in fact being followed. But I would make mental note of it, and eventually I would get to the point where I want to break contact from that individual because I don't know if there's somebody that's going to rob me. So I would use the skills that I've been trained to do to kind of break contact. As I said, going into a building with multiple exits and entrances, a multi-story building with lots of people, once confirming that this individual came to the location, then my adrenaline might start pumping just a little bit. Why is the individual following me? And then if nothing else, I've honed observation skills. What's the individual wearing? Does he look to be aggressive in any way, shape, or form? Does he have anything that can be used as a weapon in his hand? So I would basically be collecting information and doing some confirmation. So that's how I would approach that.
Yeah, no, that's all great tips. And I think you're right. When if you get into an environment, you feel like you've got somebody tailing you in some form or fashion. I used to tell people it's like increased density, will help increase the odds of losing that person, right? Without them knowing you lost them. Because sometimes, would you say giving up that that they're there, is that a good thing, or do you want to? You don't want them to know that you know.
You're exactly right, Clinton. I was
Yeah.
going to make that point. Two things. One, you want to conduct that surveillance detection, just like in the intelligence business. And this stuff you can find in many, many books talking about the principles of surveillance detection. You want to do so without aggravating whoever's following you. You don't
Yeah.
want them to know you're doing a surveillance detection. And that's the art of what we don't talk about, intelligence officers, the very details of the tricks of the trade in painful detail, because that gives us a competitive advantage of doing a surveillance detection in applying that tradecraft in such a way that our adversaries don't think that we're doing a surveillance detection route. Because if they think you're doing a surveillance detection route, then the gig's up.
Right.
You know who they are. And the other thing, and this is hard for anybody to avoid, but try not to establish eye contact, because if that person is following you, you establish eye contact, then that can aggravate the individual. I've been a surveillant with FBI, and when somebody you're following establishes eye contact, you think they're screwing with you. Like, I know who you are, and that just makes you a little aggravated. And when you're the FBI and you're aggravated, then you can change the rules of the game a little bit.
Yeah.
Similarly, right?
Yeah.
So can't somebody that's following you that might be a stalker, but then you look at them and you determine that they feel now threatened, and then how are they going to react? So it's best to conduct a surveillance detection without your adversary, in this case, or potential adversary, knowing that you're doing it.
Yeah. No, those are great points. And switching gears a little bit with more current events, you know, you've got these hackers, Russian, whether they're state sponsored or not hasn't really been advertised. I mean, I'm going to just assume they're state sponsored. But in the payments, this whole world of cryptocurrency. So what do you think? What do you think the implications are? This whole cryptocurrency capability, and as it relates to intelligence and global security.
So I'm not as steeped in cryptocurrency as I am on cyber intrusions, what's happened with solar winds. I
Yeah.
think we're going to sort through cryptocurrency, and there's going to be ways to disrupt it, track it in the future, and certainly understand trends. But it's just a level of sophistication that's increased. The threats continue to morph and evolve. The threats that criminals employ, I mean, the tradecraft that criminals employ evolves over time based on law enforcement. So this is just another adjunct to the adversaries just evolving, right? I am far more concerned with this nexus of of cyber tools that normally used to be in the province of people like me, people like you in the intelligence community. We had tools that were sacrosanct. And only a few intelligence services in the world may have had these exquisite cyber tools, just as an example. But what's happened is, one, countries like Russia have no problem employing surrogates, proxies, and frankly, using their intelligence services, as we believe that. When I say we, I'm an outside actor now, just as a student of what's happening, as somebody that's following it. My understanding is solar winds is being employed by the SVR, which is the Russian foreign intelligence wing of their service, which means they are employing really the cream of the cream of the cream, so to speak, the best actors within their intelligence capabilities they're employing to do essentially to get into your house. And they do that by going in through the back door. In the analogy that I use, once they're in your house, you don't know how long they've been there. And even after you call the cops and the cops come to your house and say, yeah, there's been an intrusion, then they don't even know where these guys are hiding out. So the criminal is still in your home, right? This is what we're talking about with the solar winds intrusion. And it is being perpetrated by intelligence services. And if it's not perpetrated by intelligence services like the GRU, which is the Russian military intelligence service, then it's surrogates and proxies. And in some cases, it's criminal hackers as well, taking those tools that I alluded to that only intelligence services had in the past that are now far more available in the dark web and other places to hold companies hostage, right? This is what has happened with physical hostages over the years and kidnapping. When people pay ransom, then it begets more kidnapping. So these are the problems the intelligence services, the U.S. intelligence community in the West is contending with right now.
Yeah, that's a tough one, especially that ransomware,
That's right.
because it can shut everything down, and basically paralyze a company until the ransom is paid. And it's very profitable as long as these guys keep paying, and they're going to keep doing it. And it's probably going to be a problem for the long haul. And I always tell people, most of the time with cyber security policy, especially these Fortune 500s I'll work with, you can have the best firewalls, the best fence lines, but it's the human factor that'll fuck you every time. And mainly because someone just clicks on something. It's the easiest way for these guys to get in is because an employee just decides to click. And the whole network is now done. And we've seen it work time and time again, whether it's here or abroad, paralyze parts of the economy, drive prices up temporarily. Heck, it was just a couple of weeks ago. It was like, people were filling up, 50 gallon barrels at the gas station there in Virginia. So,
Right.
It's just crazy. You're listening to Can You Survive This Podcast? Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and share on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.